But it's right. So we have to really be conscious of that, and how do we deal with that, and how do we deal with these kind of emotions, because otherwise we take them to the levels of war. And so I've given a lot of my life to trying to pursue the ways to peace, but I didn't start out that way. I started out as across the border down here in the United States as someone who felt that our role in life was to be the bearers of peace in the world. But the way to bear peace in the world was through being a superpower. The way to bear peace in the world was being able to knock out anybody who was your enemy. And we knew very well who were our friends and who were our enemies. Thank you, Canadians were always our friends. But we had enemies. And that was, there was the Japs who attacked us at Pearl Harbor. That's when I was a little kid. Beginning of the Second World War. Boy, we knew how to get rid of them. You know, we started building up the biggest Air Force. They came and hit us with their planes at our Pearl Harbor, so we had to get back at them. So we did. You know, we called for a lot of people. We had a draft, and we sent our young people like you guys here, I guess maybe just a little bit older than most of you, sent them off to the war, and then we had to build up the airplanes and all that. But at that time it was a call to action, so everybody had to give to the war effort. And so mothers were called into airplane factories, and they called them Rosie the Riveter, building bombers. And we built the biggest bombers, the best bombers, and the heaviest loaded bombers in the world. We were going to go after those Japs, and we might as well, while we're going after the Japs, we might as well go after those Nazis. But my dad, even though he was somewhat of an immigrant, sat out of town and says, now we're all proud of being Italians. Are there any Italians in here? People from Italian family? Oh boy, wow, punch bene, guys. Paisan. Do you know the Mexicans are stealing the word paisans from us now? When they got in jail, all the Mexican gangs call each other paisans. They're not Italians, they're not Italian. Italians are paisans, are Italians. Everybody knows that. No. But my dad sat us down and said, you know, we're very proud of being Italian. You know, all kinds of Italian stuff around the place. So I fixed Italian food and all that. He says, but we're Americans. We're in war, and so Mussolini had joined with Hitler, so the Italians technically were part of the Axis powers. So all of a sudden, are they our enemies? Oh, wait a minute, these are our relatives. They're over in Italy. This is that wonderful place, Italy, you know, and all that. Or are they our friends? Now, to show you how fun that gets, my father's dad, after many years, finally had remarried. And he married this little Italian lady from Italy. And she had been the housekeeper for her brother, who was a priest, Jesuit priest. And finally, they got married. And she was a sweet little thing. She didn't know any English. She came over to the United States. But guess what? She wasn't just a sweet little grandma, little Italian grandma. About this high, she was about, she's probably about my age now, but anyway. And guess what? She lived in Berkeley. My uncle and my dad got her a little house, sweet little house, right back in an Italian restaurant. And she, Italian, across from the Italian store. But she might be signaling Italian submarines in San Francisco Bay. So she was an alien, enemy alien. So he had to either take her away from the coast, or she would be sent to an internment camp. So we hear about the Japanese going to internment camp, but so did the Italian Germans. They were sent to internment camps. Well, I remember I went up with my dad to try to help her move it. I was just a little kid. I was just crying. They can't do that. They can't make her have to go to one of those awful places. And so, you know, finally he found a family that, you know, he could leave her with and so forth. But so all of a sudden, Grandma was an alien. She was an enemy. She was part of the enemy Nazi, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So it shows how insane and crazy this whole thing can be. So I've spent a great deal of my life, trying to discern which is which. How do we side? And what do we do about it? So I came out of the Second World War, where the last thing we did in the Second World War was, well, win the war by, what did we do to win the war? Bomb, what kind of bomb? Nuked him. Yeah, nuked him, you know, atomic bomb. Well, I was a young guy, and I'd been to military school, and then I was in JROTC in high school, rah, 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 and then I was in ROTC in college, and then out of that, I went into the Air Force. So by the time I got to the Air Force, I, of course, was considering, now I'm at the top ranks of the superpower. Oh, boy. Now we can get these big bombs. And then they started teaching us, when you go in if you drop an atomic bomb, how you can wipe out all of Moscow, and you can wipe out this, and you can wipe out that. And all of a sudden, it didn't sound so grand to me. I wasn't so convinced about this was the greatest thing to do with my life. Well, the one decision that I made is that I didn't want to be dropping bombs on people. That just seemed to be too much. But I didn't mind shooting down bombers. That would be okay. So I got into air defense, and so I was in the little two-man fighter. We were guarding the Detroit, Chicago area, and for bombers that would be coming over the pole, over Canada, and hopefully they wouldn't drop their bombs here on the way down, and would get down to the States. And we were in Indiana. So I remember one day they scrambled us. They called us. This was after the Korean War, so there was no beginning of the Cold War. So we were just right for the Russians to come sneaking in and dropping the nuclear bombs in our backyards. So they sent us out. There was this other guy, a pilot, and I. We were flying. I was handling the missiles. He was pilot. And so we get in our little plane. And nowadays it takes maybe 20 minutes for a missile to come from the Soviet Union and bomb the United States. But in those days, it didn't. They had to fly a bomber, and that'd take like 9 hours. So we had to sit in the alert hangar, continually waiting. We did it 24 hours in a row, but when there was a high alert like this, it was even more intense. So they kept telling us, well, they're on their way, they're getting closer. We kept getting these updates. They're getting closer, they're getting closer. We were getting more nervous. You have to keep going to the bathroom. They call it a nervous pee. You kept going to the bathroom. My God, in a few minutes, we're going to have to go up and shoot down a bomber. So finally, they had us 5 minutes alert, and then you're sitting right out on the plane, ready to go, waiting to go. Oh, this is probably just a hoax. They'll probably never scramble us, but all of a sudden, whoop, scramble. So off we go. We take off, positively identified target, and they start giving us directions how to get there and all that. The ground radar. So then the radar tells us that we had 2 ways in those days to approach it. That if you wanted to find out who they were, we did what you call identification pass. So we have to come up alongside of them and look over and identify, well, is this a bomber, is this a whatever? But they said, oh no, it's positively identified. We've been tracking it for 9 hours. Do a firing pass. You come at 90 degrees and fire your missile. Well, it was hard if you didn't identify, died up alongside of them, and then had to come around and come at a 90-degree angle. So they wanted us to just go ahead and do a firing pass and shoot them down, because they might get by and drop a nuke on Detroit or Chicago, or maybe they'd be bombing Canada on the way. So anyway, and even though they were telling us to shoot it down, we said, we better go look. So we did. We went and pulled up beside them and took a look, and we called back. And you know how if you order something, an airliner or something like that, and they're giving you your numbers of your confirmation code, and they use us, a Russian bombers, instead of shoot it down. So we said, well, gosh, we're just standing beside it, and there's some ladies waving at us out the window. I mean, it's an American airline. And we were sent up and told to shoot it down. They were an enemy. They were an enemy with a nuclear bomb, ready to drop it on Chicago or Detroit or whichever was their supposed target. Well, they weren't an enemy target. And we would have shot down an American airliner full of somebody's grandmothers, etc. Well, everybody's somebody's grandmother. Is there any plane that ought to be shot down with a bunch of mothers and children and all of that? Who are really our enemy? When I hear talks about torturing people, I've been involved quite a bit in trying to stop torture. When I hear all the talk about torturing, and I've gone to places like down by anyway, Fort Huachuca in Arizona, where they teach people how to torture and send them to Guantanamo Bay and Abu Ghraib and all of these places where our enemies are, and where my sister would say, I don't want to get on my sister's case, but a lot of you, she's afraid. She's very afraid the people that attacked those World Trade Towers and that they're lurking in front of her house.